There is a point where identity stops needing attention. Not because you lose a sense of self, and not because you become undefined, but because you're no longer maintaining who you are. This episode is about what it's like to live without keeping an identity intact. For a long time, identity required upkeep. You remembered who you were supposed to be, what mattered to you, how you showed up. Even subtle changes felt risky. If something shifted, you wondered what it meant about you. So identity stayed active, checked, adjusted, protected. When the story quiets, that maintenance relaxes. You don't wake up thinking about who you are. You don't orient yourself around a label. You respond to the day, and identity follows quietly without needing to be managed. This can feel disorienting at first. We're used to identity providing stability. Without it being foreground, you might expect confusion. But what appears instead is flexibility. You're not trying to be consistent. You're being responsive. Identity without maintenance doesn't feel empty. Feels light. You don't need to remember who you were yesterday to act today. You don't need to protect a self-concept before engaging. You meet situations as they arise. This changes how you relate to contradiction. Earlier, contradiction felt threatening. If you acted differently than expected, you questioned yourself. Was this aligned? Was this a step backward? Now, contradiction doesn't register as a problem. You can be patient in one moment and impatient in the next. You don't reconcile those states. You let them pass. Identity no longer needs coherence. It only needs to function. Identity without maintenance also changes how you relate to growth. Growth no longer feels like adding traits or refining yourself. It feels like shedding effort. You're not trying to become better defined. You're becoming less constrained. This doesn't mean values disappear. Values still show up, but they're not held as statements. They're lived. You don't remind yourself what you believe. You act in ways that reflect it when it matters. This makes life quieter internally. You're not narrating yourself. You're not checking whether your actions fit your identity. You're not editing yourself in real time. You act. You adjust. You continue. Identity without maintenance also affects how you relate to change. Change no longer threatens your sense of self. You don't ask who you'll be after. You trust that whatever remains will be workable. This trust doesn't come from certainty. It comes from seeing that identity doesn't need guarding to survive change. It adapts on its own. Another subtle shift is how you relate to recognition. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you, because there's no identity being propped up. Feedback becomes information, not evaluation. You take what's useful. You leave the rest. Identity without maintenance also changes how you speak about yourself. You don't describe yourself as much. You don't lead with definitions. You let actions speak without commentary. This can feel understated, but it's also freeing. You're not representing a version of yourself. You're present. This episode isn't suggesting identity disappears. Identity still exists in practical ways. You have preferences. You have history. You have personality. But identity is no longer the center around which everything rotates. It's a background function, available when needed, invisible when not. If you're listening to this and noticing that you care less about being consistent, less about protecting an image, less about knowing who you are, that's not loss. That's identity without maintenance. And if these reflections help you feel more at ease living without holding yourself together, you're welcome to stay with the season as it continues. Liking the video helps it reach others who may be tired of managing who they are. If someone you care about feels exhausted by trying to stay true to a version of themselves, you're welcome to share this with them, only if it feels right. Identity doesn't need constant attention to function. It only needs space, and space is already here.